I'm Taylor Johnson. I'm the Chief Performance Engineer of StateSpace, and privileged to be able to speak with these awesome panelists. And so the title is Aspiring Pro Players, but really it's just professionals in general. So we have former pro players, we have streamers, casters, and really just learn insights of their journey along the way and share that with everybody. So if you would, just introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself.
Sure, hi. My name is Mark. My online alias is Valkyr. I've been a streamer for nearly 5 years. So I play a game called Overwatch, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. And that's the kind of game I really stuck my teeth into and kind of became quite well known within that community. But my professional side of my life always makes sure that whatever I do, I always take it to the highest level it can be and always kind of step back and think, how can I make this better? So yeah, content creator. I don't know, it depends on how you guys kind of see the streaming life, but it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of cool background work to it.
I'm George. My online name is King George. I played Rainbow Six Siege professionally for 2 years, and I won the Invitational, which is kind of like our League of Legends Worlds, the closest thing, I guess, to it. And I stopped playing professionally now, and I'm just a streamer and content creator. So.
Hi, I'm Christine. My online alias is Potter. I've been involved in competing in Counter-Strike for nearly 20 years. And yeah, right now I'm an analyst and commentator for Counter-Strike, so I just travel and talk about Counter-Strike all day.
Awesome. So what I'd like to do is kind of start with a little bit about your journeys and share a little bit about this path to pro and maybe where you started out and where you are now, and maybe some of the key lessons along the way, and we can kind of unpack that as we go along. Mark, you want to start?
Yeah, so before I was a content creator and streamer, I worked at a computer company that we used to sell kind of gaming products and memory pre-built systems called Overclockers in the UK as marketing manager. And through that process, content creation and the viability of sponsoring streamers to send out your message of your companies, it started to grow and become stronger. And the more I kind of sponsored these streamers, I thought, hey, I could probably do this. I want to try this out and see if it's something that I could make happen for myself. So I decided to one day say, right, I'm going to get involved in streaming. I'm going to I quit my job. It was a bit of a leap of faith, but nothing in life really happens without sometimes making a sacrifice to for something that may or may not work out. So as I went through into streaming, I said, right, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. It was approached in a way which was not, oh, well, it could happen. It's like, right, I've got a schedule. I'm going to make sure I stick to the schedule, make sure all of these kind of milestones are met, as any business would be. Because streaming really is a business. It's kind of how you have to treat it. It's really great, and you have your community. But if you don't treat it in a certain aspect, you'll never be able to take it to the next level. And especially if you want to make it financially viable to do it full time, it's a huge grind. So you've got to have all the key elements in place before you're able to kind of take it to that next level. So I was able to get in there as the game Overwatch was coming out, and I said, right, I'm going to be the guy who kind of creates content and put my all into it and see where it takes you. And sometimes you hit the nail on the head and you make it right, and you can kind of continue from there, and you never know where it's going to grow into, so it'll kind of expand out. And I'm very lucky to be working with you guys in AimLab as well, which is really nice. So yeah, it's kind of my story in a short sentence.
Awesome. George?
Yeah, before I started playing Rainbow Six, I actually kind of ended up playing Rainbow Six off of a whim. I had a shoulder injury, and I had some time off of work, and one of my friends was like, we should pick this game up and play it. We started playing it, and we qualified for Pro League and some community tournaments, and I was still working full-time. I had previously owned a fireworks business, which I had sold, and I was working in property management and real estate, and I was still working full-time while playing full-time, so not sleeping full-time. It just kind of ended up working out. Like it's kind of sometimes those things in life where it's almost like you're in, like you see something that's bad, right? Like you have a shoulder injury and it ends up working out in a way where you get essentially your dream job. And for me, I only quit my job after we won the Invitational. The whole time I was still working full-time too. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm going to give this a set amount of time. If it doesn't work out, at the end of the day, I still need to do something that puts food on the table, essentially. And I was like, I'm going to give this 110%. I want this more than I've ever wanted anything in my life. And it all ended up working out. So.
Awesome.
For me, I guess it all started for me when I watched my brother playing Counter-Strike, and he would never let me play. So it just turned into like this obsession of wanting to have something that I couldn't have. And it all started off with me saving for the whole year to be able to attend a LAN once a year, and it turned into a career. I always tell people that Counter-Strike for me started off as an obsession and somehow turned into a passion and somehow turned into my profession. So it all started off though with an obsession for I think problem solving and competition. And I didn't realize either of those things could be so relevant in computer games.
Amazing. So, Christine, when you think about your path to where you are now and into professional playing, some of the questions from the users are, what drives you to get up every morning to continue to play? Because it can be a grind, and there's a lot of time and dedication and energy that's put into it. So what have been some of the frameworks or some of the go-to drivers for you outside of maybe beating your brother?
Definitely, it's the small victories, which I think while I was competing full-time, I didn't realize. But looking back now, it was like the small problem-solving victories of, I ran into, in a server with my teammates trying to figure out how to be better, right? Just generally. And then when you accomplish that together, you don't realize it at the time, but I think that's what drives you. And a lot of it is obsession, right? Like missing out on so much sleep, prioritizing playing video games over all else. It certainly takes a lot of will, I suppose. Like when I look back on it now, I'm like, how did I do that for so long? But yeah, I think it was just like my own obsession of wanting to keep playing.
Mm-hmm. George?
For me, the biggest thing that made me want to get up every day and do it is you just want to be the best. Like at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that will say like they want to win, but I think there's a difference between like saying it and like actually truly meaning it, where you give it like absolutely everything. You give 110%. You're gonna skip sleeping. You're gonna take that extra time, watch that extra VOD of the enemy team. You're gonna go and do that extra dry run, and you need to have the rest of your team be that way too. Or if there's one weak link in your team, it's just not gonna end up working out for you. So.
For me, getting up every day, it's kind of with what I do, it's you make your own path. You kind of pave your own way. The way I like to always say about Twitch is it's kind of like a blank canvas, and you get to paint it the way you want it to be. So if you want to be a professional player, or if you want to be an entertainer, you get to paint it and you get to follow that path. So I think it's that you don't know what the day will bring. When you stream, you have an audience. For people, I'm sure all of you are familiar with Twitch, but if you're not, Twitch is a live platform where you broadcast live and you have an audience of real people on the other end, and they can write to you and you can respond. And I kind of love that we can connect to the whole world from one location and talk and find out all these stories of other people who are part of your community daily and find out how they live their lives. And eventually, it's more than just you in the stream, it's your community and everybody that's inside it. And I just kind of love meeting these people and knowing that, I'm able to be very privileged to be able to do this for a living. And you just don't know where it's going to take you. For me this time, I'm in New York, so it's
That's right.
amazing.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing from all three of you is there is this outcome that you're going after, but there is a distinction between outcomes and behaviors. You may have this championship goal or this professional goal, but then the behaviors that feed into that really kind of set you up for success. So if you could maybe talk through, like, what does a typical day look like as a streamer, as a player, as an analyst now, and as a caster, and kind of going through the process. What does that look like? Mark, you want to start?
So a typical day for me would be, ideally I would like to put more planning into the days that happen, but a lot of it's quite passive. So I'll get up, and there's a lot of background work to do with content creation as well. So emails, talking to anybody who, any sponsors that I'm working with, any emails of potential sponsors, anybody who wants, I get emails from kind of fans and people who enjoy what I do. So in the game, I'm known for one particular hero. So I'll get like email of people asking like, oh, how do you do this? Or what's your thoughts? Or can you check out this clip? And I'll try and answer as many emails as possible. And then I'll go into streaming. So the day will just be kind of, I like to stream between 4 and 6 hours I find that after a while of streaming, you get a bit of burnout as you would do. So the streams are very high in energy, and then you'll find that you'll slow down, and it will just get a little bit harder to continue streaming. And with streaming, you've got to be playing the game, reading the chat, and doing your kind of entertainment as well, and all three of it is kind of like this big cycle of burnout that you'll have if you don't balance it correctly. So if you're, some streamers, they stream for like 12 to 15 hours a day, and it's crazy. Like I used to do that at the very beginning. I'm like, the more I'm online, the more chance I have that people will see my stream and come and join. And it's a nice idea, but then if people come to a stream which is not very entertaining because you're already tired, people go, well, this is nice, but he seems like, he's not really answering the chat, and he looks a little bit miserable, probably because he's been doing it, or he or she has been doing it too long. So for me, 4 and 6 hours, I think, is the sweet spot of being able to stream. But sometimes it can go on longer. Sometimes, as gaming goes, you get engrossed, and suddenly you've been playing for 12 hours, and it feels like 2 minutes. So I'm sure you all know what that feels like.
Yep.
So, and especially in competitive gaming, so about 10 years ago, I used to play competitively in a Call of Duty game, and I understand that what it's like, that kind of excitement, and you don't realize that time just slips away. But this was prior to kind of streaming and making it as like a form of entertainment for people to watch.
For me personally, when I played professionally, I feel like there's two types of people. Some people can get away with maybe like not practicing as much, and it can be good for them because their minds are clear when they go into games, and they have this fresh approach every single time. But for me personally, I can't do that. I need to spend basically, I know that I need to put in the extra time to be good. So a normal day when I was a pro, I'd wake up before everybody else. I'd start watching all the VODs of our enemy teams before everyone else got up. Terrorist hunt and practice. I wish Aim Labs was out back then, it would have helped. But because Siege warm-up is not exactly the best. But then we'd practice against European teams in the morning through the afternoon, take a small break to eat, and go over all of our mistakes from earlier in the day, and then practice against North American teams all late into the night, review the VODs, go to bed, get back up in the morning and do the same thing every day, 7 days a week, no days off. That's why one of the reasons I switched to streaming full-time instead is because now it's a lot easier. I wake up, I can spend time with friends and family. If I have errands to do, I can get all that done and then just stream at night. So.
I think for me, when I'm not traveling, I try to play as many games as I can and watch as many games as I can, which is pretty easy for me because I'm a huge fan of multiple games, so I'm constantly watching broadcasts. And then I try to play as many games as I can. I think game IQ or game sense is transferable across a lot of games. It's generally the same, so I try to maintain a sense of my game sense so that when I talk about winning or losing in games, it just is easier. So yeah, I try to play as many games as I can.
Awesome. So it sounds like there's a lot of lessons learned along the way. So maybe looking back on your careers, what might be some knowledge you could drop to some aspiring professionals, whether it's a pro gamer, streamer, analyst, maybe like one or two things?
If I had to go back and tell myself something, it would be, the one thing I would tell myself is start it a little bit earlier. I got into streaming it in 2015, but I know that if I knew what it was going to grow into today and what it's going to grow into the future, I'd say get in earlier, but obviously that advice is only good for if you had a time machine. So I would say approach it, if you're serious about becoming either a streamer or a gamer, a professional gamer, make sure you approach it from a serious angle and know that there's more dimensions to it than just playing. There's as much as IQ is important, EQ, people skills, is super important as well. So making sure that the people around you, the people that you talk to, and anybody that you're communicating with really kind of understands what you do, and making sure that you make the most of every opportunity, I think is super important. So making sure that if you're going to do something, like put your all into it.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me, I would say, is probably I mean, obviously, depending on the person, spending the extra time could always be useful, but it's about being productive in that time. If you're just playing casual games for 12 hours, you're probably not going to improve very much, whereas if you're actually practicing and working on and looking at your mistakes and improving on them, that's going to do you a lot better having a few hours of that over 12 hours of just running around mindlessly. So.
I think for me, if I were to go back, I would definitely tell myself to learn how to prioritize a schedule, make smaller goals for myself, achievable goals, so that I can actually gauge my progress. And yeah, I think prioritizing my schedule is probably the most important. For me, I definitely, when I look back, realize that I missed the course on adulting. Definitely missed that one. So I'm realizing now, taking a step back from being a competitor, it's like, oh, that's what you do as an adult. Like, I feel like I'm figuring those things out now. So definitely prioritizing just health, well-being, taxes, stuff like that.
Taxes, yeah.
If I can chime in
Yeah,
here,
of course.
the schedule is really, really important. It's very, when you're running your own thing, it's very easy to kind of become complacent and say, yeah, I'll do it later, not stick to a schedule. I think it's really important that if you're going to do something, that you do work in blocks. So that's really, yeah, I completely agree with that. It's very easy to let go of that and like say, yeah, no, I'll do it tomorrow. But you really have to stick with it.
So what's that been like? So where would you look to refine that schedule? And are you looking to, like we had speakers talk earlier about looking to other sports and industries? Are you pulling inspiration from other places and saying, okay, let me try this out for this block of training or anything like that?
I would say if I'm looking at kind of inspiration, I don't really have much inspiration in terms of schedule, more that I'll probably keep an eye on other streamers and say, oh, what this guy is, doing really well, like what's working for them, and then kind of analyzing how often they stream, and maybe they're doing more so than just streaming, they're expanding outside of Twitch and they're doing kind of more social community stuff and trying to figure out what it is that will take you to the next level. So it's more just inspiration from all the people that are around you who are as successful in a certain area, and that's really nice to see. The way that other people kind of expand in their own way, and it's innovation really, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of streamers, and then you'll really spot the ones that kind of try something different and try something new and go, oh, that was really clever of them. Maybe there's something else I could do like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think most professional gamers in our space right now just kind of happens to be there. They organically made it there, whether because pure mechanically they're gifted gods or they're in the right place at the right time. So I think figuring out how to be as efficient and effective as possible, having some sort of regime like that, taking inspiration from really accomplished athletes, I think is probably the best idea, just because they've made it. They understand what it takes to be an effective athlete. So definitely from traditional sports, inspiration from there, just to be as efficient as possible, I think. Because thinking back for myself, gaming, there was never a point where I said, if I do this, I'll have better outcomes because I slept 8 hours a day. It was more so like, okay, I'm only going to sleep 3 hours here so I can game more, So I think having a healthy outlook on being as efficient as possible is something we're somewhat missing.
Sure, yeah. George, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, I look a lot to, I guess from Counter-Strike, from Get Right. I don't know, just seeing all those like images of him back at all the LAN events where he's there at 1 a.m. still just doing aimbots, practicing. I don't know. For me, I think that's once again like the most important thing is that it'll never start out when you're playing. Like everyone looks now to everybody else who's out there streaming and stuff. They don't see the time that goes in before you have a lot of viewers and subs and all that kind of stuff. They don't see the time. It'll never be worth your time, like dollar per hour. You're better off doing pretty much anything else. You do it because you love it, and if you love something enough, it could become a job for you. So.
Yeah, awesome. So what is maybe a challenge that people don't realize is as difficult as it really is?
The grind.
Yeah, the grind and how it's constantly evolving as well. So while in content creation, you've got some people that watch you for the game. So I always put people into two different categories. People who watch you for the game you're playing, whether that be because you're, again, mechanically gifted at the game you're playing. And there's viewers who enjoy you for your personality. And so they'll enjoy whatever game you play. And these kind of viewers are the ones you really want, because it means you can play any game comfortably and retain all your viewers, because the viewers are kind of, at the end of the day, the people who will support your channel to help you continue what you're doing. So the challenge is that you've really got to keep your eye on the game all the time. So if you play a game that's suddenly becoming less popular, and you have to kind of forecast and say, right, if I continue playing this game, am I really going to be able to be, I'm going to have fun, but is it going to be sustainable financially? Am I going to be able to continue paying my bills? You kind of have to think critically. While it's I don't always like thinking like that, because I love the community, I love gaming, I have been doing it since very young, but you have to, especially with people who have mortgages to pay and have other dependables, you've got to make sure that it's something which is the right choice. Sometimes you don't always know if it is, but sometimes from past history you can say, right, well, I can see this is going downhill here, maybe I have to expand out and try something new. But alongside that, there's other areas which can be a problem. Burnout, again, it comes up in conversations in pretty much every topic of every sport ever. Doing too much can make you run down, and then that can affect you. Mental health can be bad, so times where I've had to take a couple of weeks off when I've put too much in. So I kind of took opportunity in a promotion where when I would stream, people could unlock things in a game. Great for viewers, but then I put so many hours, I put 10 to 15 hours daily, and then after that, I couldn't, I felt run down, and so everything I kind of built up, my mental health, unfortunately lost kind of a lot of traction with that. So it's about having the right health balance as well, and then the more we do this, the more we realize that having a healthy mind and healthy body is good for, sitting down and being in front of a computer all day as well.
I would say the same, once again, same thing they're saying, the grind, because unlike a traditional business that's, say, 9 to 5 or 9 to 10, I mean, if you're not streaming, somebody else is at the end of the day. So it's a 24/7. I mean, if you really want to, if you somehow were able to stay live for 24 hours, 7 days a week, people would watch you. So there's always like that little like tick in the back of your head that's like, oh, I should probably be live right now. Like, I don't know, I should be streaming right now, even if it's, once again, like you're not sleeping enough or anything like that. Eventually, you kind of get control over that over time, but in the beginning, it's definitely something you're always considering.
Yeah.
So.
I guess probably the self-realization of where you actually are in terms of your chances of being pro, I think is important. I think games and video games, I think everyone that I've ever met who talks about gaming, they all think they're really good. There's not a single gamer I'll meet that'll say, I'm not that great at the game. They'll all talk about how good they are, how they owned someone last night. And I think all games are kind of built like that to make you feel like you're a god at the game. But so I think it's important probably to understand where you are and as far as the reality of the situation, whether you can actually make it to pro or not, because there's not that many pros. There's really not that many just talented gamers. So it takes a lot to become a pro. So I think it's important to have self-realization, I suppose.
Definitely. I think that also comes along the journey as well, and going through those hardships and the grind. And I think everybody's talked about it. It's a grind, and it's a lot of time and effort. So what do you what's the future in esports and gaming, with now having conversations like we've been having today and realizing health and wellness is that much more important? At what point does it really become a bigger conversation around balance? And how is that being portrayed, or how can that be communicated in a way that will maybe land with people?
In terms of balance, I think it's definitely important it's kind of like the message of being healthy while doing something while you're kind of like gaming. You don't really take it seriously. I don't think anybody really takes a 10-minute break every hour, or what you're supposed to be doing. And I think it's definitely important that you stay healthy while you do something like this, because sitting in one spot for hours a day and not really doing much, it's, as human needs go, it's something which you shouldn't really do. You need to exercise. So I started to try and exercise a little bit more now. I went out running every single day before I moved, and now I've moved. I need to get back into it again. But the future, I think the future is that esports is only going to grow, gaming's only going to grow, and eventually a lot of the stars you'll see of the future will be gamers, as it kind of already is in some parts of Asia, where some of the gamers there are like the big sports athletes that you'd see, and they're kind of like looked upon as inspiration to many gamers alike. which is really nice. And I think that's only going to spread across the world as well. So for people who are streamers like myself, where we have a great community, and then we can also monetize that as well, which is nice. So more brands are going to want to come and get involved in this as well, and it gives a little bit more security to people who do this for a living, which is nice. So yeah, I think it can only get better, really, and it's a very exciting journey to be in. I don't have a crystal ball to say what the future's going to hold, but I can have a good guess that it's going to be something fairly fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the future definitely looks bright. I mean, every year, every esports tournament grows. Every year, generally Twitch and all the other platforms are growing rapidly. So it's just up and up from here for sure.
I think gaming and esports is the future, and I think as esports and competing in video games gets more and more mainstream, I think it's going to be really important to educate parents and what have you to be able to communicate with their child how to have balance, how to have a good balance as far as how they approach video games. I think probably right now, because video games is not as mainstream and because your parents don't let you play as much as you want, there's more of like that obsession part that I was talking about. But as it becomes more mainstream, I think it'll be like, not encouraged, but figuring out how to actually balance gaming and real life will probably become more of a topic.
It's starting to happen right now. I mean, if you look at Ninja, he's basically a legitimate celebrity now. He's more than just a gamer at this point. So
Definitely. So one other point to ask about is, with your schedules and taking into consideration the balance and everything, I mean, what are some ways that you're actually training the mechanics of the game? So whether it's streaming might be one thing, but thinking about how you're setting up your practice, let's say an individual practice block, what does that look like?
So in Overwatch, the game I play a hero called Pharah. She has a rocket launcher, and there's a travel time between shooting and hitting the target. So I've trained myself over years to be able to be very consistent at hitting these shots, and a lot of my viewers aspire to be able to play at a high level with the same hero, and they'll always say, how am I able to do the same sort of things as you do? And it was always fairly difficult because there was no proper training regime, actually. So good part to plug in AimLab here is that AimLab provides a facility that my viewers can kind of practice inside. So I'm going to have an academy course, which is really nice, and the academy is going to be built based off my training, kind of like a training simulation that I've kind of set up, saying if you want to get better at this hero, here's a really great place to go in and practice. And after kind of trialing it, I was like, this is really good to be able to improve. And that's based on any kind of hit scan game, or you can, for example, the game that I play, Overwatch, and the hero that I play. So I'll kind of grind. For me, I am obsessed in trying to get better as well. The part is that I'm not particularly interested in going pro and going into a team, because I'd rather kind of look after myself and be my own boss rather than having to kind of work with the team. Like, I like to do that, but I rather kind of be like an individual. So I like to play at a high level, but just not that next part. And I just love to kind of grind, practice, get better. A lot of it is just practice, but like anything in life. So, but that's one way that people can really practice to get or get better at the way that I work.
yeah, for Rainbow Six, unfortunately the only warm-up mode we have is Terrorist Hunt, which is not very good warm-up for the most part. So some of the courses that I've been working on with AIM Labs is practicing like different pixel gaps and getting peeked around corners rapidly like you do in Siege. One of the characters that everyone always laughs about, she has no hitbox, is Ashe. She's basically a piece of spaghetti with a P on top of it as her hitbox. So those lessons are coming soon, and yeah, just overall, it's just time, really, like being in every different situation, every different scenario, and I guess trying to run it through your head before you attack something or push forward, like what could happen if I take this fight, or if I decide not to, and I guess going through all those scenarios mentally every single time, it's something you just get used to from playing a lot.
I think for CSGO, reps is probably the most important. For CSGO, there's a lot of different warm-up methods that you can do, but mainly all the pros will warm up with bots on an offline server. So there'll be particular maps that'll be set up for reflexes, reactions, even grenade setups. There's a lot of utility in Counter-Strike that players will use to give themselves a better chance with winning the round. So there's a lot of maps with different parts that show the smoke lineups or the perfect flashbang lineups and what have you. So just depending on exactly what you want to focus on for the warm-up, there's a lot of actually tools in CSGO that allow you to do that.
Awesome. So while we wrap up the panel, is there anything else you'd like to share about your journey and path to where you are now or looking ahead?
Any of you guys?
I always say just if you feel like you want to go for it, but have realistic expectations too, and don't put everything else in your life on hold until you're in a position where you see that there's potential to go forward. I wouldn't ever recommend that someone just quit school, quit their job, quit everything they're doing, and just from nothing try to play professionally or stream. But if you see that there's traction going somewhere, you can slowly kind of cut down the hours from the other stuff, and that stuff will have its time later in life if you're seeing a pattern of success. So,
I think it sums up quite nicely, actually.
yeah.
Well said. Any questions from the speakers? Yeah.
I know probably every creator at some point has put a lot of effort, a lot of time to a certain video they thought it was like the best thing ever. They hit upload, and then instantly they're seeing like some comments that are like super negative, super toxic. So I was wondering how you handle that. You like work so hard on something and you just receive feedback that you just weren't expecting or weren't prepared for.
I think if you think it's great and you know that it's in a good intention, it doesn't particularly matter what people think, because the problem is there's so many different types of people, you can't please everybody. But so long as there's a group of people who do appreciate what it is that you've put out, then I think that's kind of enough. You know, you've got to step back and go, right, is this content, is it offensive to people? Is it in line with, general common sense? And if it is, typically it's probably going to do quite well. But you will always get negative comments. You'll get people who will just hate just for the sake of hating, just for no apparent reason other than wanting to get attention. Overall, if you know that the content is good and you believe that, then it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks or whatever they write. You just ignore it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, too, you're just, as humans, we're always going to look at the negative. Even if there's 100 positive comments and there's one negative, just as humans, we're going to naturally pick that one comment out and look at it. But you just have to remember, and eventually, like over time, it gets easier. You just realize that no matter what you do, you have to look at the other 100 people that have positive comments and kind of pass over the one that doesn't. So.
I think for me, I'm my own harshest critic. So whatever comment I read, I've already thought it. I've already said it to myself, so it doesn't affect me much. But I will say I try to differentiate like what's a troll, what's actually going to be constructive, and what's not. And that tends to help.
Awesome. Yes.
I think esports kind of has a major difference from other sports out there, as other sports like football, baseball, basketball, there's no real danger of the core mechanics ever changing, maybe minor rule changes. With esports, your game may fade out. Overwatch 2 is coming out. Counter-Strike went through 1.6, Source Go. As an aspiring pro player, is there any real danger of not staying relevant in the scene if you don't keep up with the game you're playing?
That's no matter what. Like for Rainbow Six, for example, the game I play, there's every 3 months there's new operators that are introduced to the game. There's either a new map or a map rework, and then there's always mid-season updates as well that tweak operators. So, I mean, you constantly have to be on top of everything that's changing in the game because, and I always tell people if they're planning on playing professionally, like for Rainbow Six Siege, there's 50 million players that play the game, over 50 million now, and there's 160 pros. That's 0.0000032% of players are professional players, and those players are getting paid a salary to do that full time as a living. So if you're not playing professionally, you're aspiring to, you have to put in the extra time and effort and be better than them to take their spot, essentially. So.
I would say that's the danger with picking a game, because there are some games that will peak very quickly and then will fade out. But the thing is, what you learn during the time of one game is transferable to other games. And I think that's the most important part, is that if you're playing in like an FPS game, the FPS mechanics will transfer to another game, and so will the game sense of like practicing and all the kind of mental preparation that you've done in one game. Another game may be similar, you just have to add their kind of special mechanics that they have in their own game. So yeah, there is that kind of, let's say, I don't say fear, but that kind of element of things change, and they can change quite quickly. Some games stick and some don't. But at the end, if you think and play at a professional level in one game, you'll find pros will move from game to game and play professionally in another game. One guy, his name's Claus, is Zalius, and he was a professional Quake Champions player. And I played versus him, and he's a little bit younger. And my God, he's amazing. Like his game sense. I played versus him in a 1v1 because he was going to train me. Every time I made a mistake, because we were on comms, he'd say, mistake. And then I would die like 2 seconds later. And it was just fantastic. And he now, he plays Apex professionally. So he moved from being amazing at one game to another game, and he could transfer his skills across and still play a very amazing level. I close my eyes when I go to sleep, I hear mistake, and I'm like, oh, what have I done wrong today? But yeah, so I think so long as you know how to play professionally, it's not limited to the game you play, it's just limited to how you apply it to different games.
I definitely have to echo that. I think we have a handful of players that are already going from one game to another, especially in the FPS, first-person shooter games. And there's even more players that could transfer over from game to game. They just choose to stay within their game. And I do believe that game sense, game IQ mechanics, they're all very much transferable from game to game. So a player that's able to hone in on their talents, they usually shine in other games as well.
Awesome. That wraps up our time, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course. Cheers.